Have you ever wondered what the world will look like by the year 2050? Experts predict that nearly 80% of the human population will be confined within the towering concrete walls of giant, hyper-connected megacities. We are rapidly approaching an era where artificial meat, grown in sterile laboratories from isolated cells, will replace the natural food chain. We are raising a generation of children who may grow up, live, and die without ever truly interacting with a real breathing animal. In this sanitized, heavily curated future, the visceral realities of life, death, and sustenance will be completely hidden behind shiny supermarket packaging and digital screens. Humanity is building an illusion of immortality, desperately trying to forget the fragility of flesh and the inevitability of the grave. Yet amidst this sterile modern utopia, on the 10th day of Dhul-Hijjah, a timeless ancient cry will still echo across the globe. Millions of believers will raise their voices in takbir, knives will be sharpened, blood will flow into the earth, and the unyielding Sunnah of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, will breathe life into a world that has forgotten how to submit. But the modern world watches this and recoils. They point their fingers and call the act of sacrifice a barbaric relic of the past. They ask, with a mix of disdain and genuine confusion, why Muslims still perform this ritual when much of the world claims to have moved past it. Are we simply clinging to an outdated tradition, or is there a profound, earth-shattering truth hidden in the shedding of this blood? A truth that modern humanity is absolutely terrified to face. In this deep exploration of faith, history, and the human soul, we will journey from the very first drop of blood ever spilled on Earth to the philosophical debates of modern veganism, the age of artificial meat, and the signs of the end times. Welcome to Divine Sagas, where we unravel the mysteries of our faith to fortify your heart for the trials ahead. If you are ready to confront the illusions of this world and discover the true essence of submission, let us begin. To understand the controversy surrounding Qurban, or sacrifice, we must first travel back to the very dawn of human existence. Today, secular historians and critics confidently claim that the act of animal sacrifice is rooted in paganism. They paint a picture of primitive, terrified humans who slaughtered animals to appease angry gods of thunder, rain, and harvest. They argue that the ancient Israelites merely adopted these barbaric customs and that Islam later absorbed them into its own theology. But according to the divine revelation of the Quran, this secular narrative is not just flawed, it is the exact opposite of the truth. The origin of sacrifice is not born from the dark ignorance of paganism. It is born from the pure, blinding light of divine revelation.
The very first sacrifice recorded in human history is inextricably linked to the immediate children of Prophet Adam and our mother Hawa, peace be upon them both. After they were exiled from the unimaginable perfection of paradise, they were thrust into the harsh, unforgiving reality of the earth. They had to build a life from the dirt, entirely dependent on the mercy of their Creator. In these strange, untamed lands, their first children were born, bringing both hope and the profound complexities of human nature. Among them were two brothers, Habil and Qabil. They were raised in the same home, fed by the same parents, and taught the same truth. Yet the landscapes of their hearts were entirely different. As a test of their faith and to resolve a deeply rooted dispute, Allah commanded the two brothers to offer a sacrifice. This was not a pagan ritual, it was a divine metric of sincerity. Habil was a shepherd. His heart was soft, his soul was anchored in humility, and his awareness of Allah was absolute. When he was asked to offer something to his Lord, he did not hesitate. He went to his flock and carefully selected the absolute best ram he possessed, the healthiest, the strongest, the most valuable. He gave what he loved because he understood that the one who created the ram was far more beloved to him than the ram itself. Qabil, on the other hand, was a farmer But his heart was infected with the most dangerous disease known to creation: arrogance. His anger was a rising tide, and a dark shadow of jealousy consumed his thoughts. When it came time to present his offering, he carelessly gathered the worst of his crops, moldy, decaying, and utterly worthless. He offered the bare minimum, treating the command of Allah as a burdensome chore rather than a sacred privilege. The two brothers ascended a mountain, placing their offerings before the heavens. The earth held its breath. Then a blinding fire descended from the sky, a miraculous sign of divine acceptance. The flames enveloped Habil's beautiful ram, consuming it and lifting it upward, while Qabil's rotting crops remained untouched, rejected, and humiliated upon the cold stone. At that exact moment, the Quran reveals a truth that shatters the foundation of every hollow act of worship. It is a short, terrifying, and awe-inspiring sentence. Indeed, Allah only accepts from the righteous. The Lord of the worlds was never looking at the size of the ram or the quantity of the harvest. He was peering directly into the depths of their hearts. But Qabil could not process this rejection. His bruised ego spiraled into an uncontrollable, blinding rage. He looked at his own flesh and blood and uttered the most terrifying sentence the world had ever heard: "I will surely kill you." It was the genesis of violence, the first time a human mind conceived the idea of extinguishing another human life. Iblis had successfully planted the seed of murder. Yet Habil's response remains one of the greatest testaments of courage and faith in the Quran. He looked at his furious brother and said, "If you should raise your hand against me to kill me, I shall not raise my hand against you to kill you. Indeed, I fear Allah, Lord of the worlds." Habil understood the ultimate reality.
He would rather be the oppressed victim lying in the grave than the oppressor standing over it with blood on his hands. And so, the first murder in human history took place. The first innocent blood soaked into the soil of the earth, crying out to its creator. Islamic scholars profoundly note that the first death in human history was centered entirely on the concept of sacrifice. Sacrifice was the ultimate mirror. It revealed who truly lived for the pleasure of the Almighty and who was secretly enslaved to their own dark desires. As generations multiplied and centuries turned into millennia, this pure, divine knowledge of sacrifice passed down from Prophet Adam slowly began to corrupt. The human soul grew weak, and societies scattered across the earth. Before and after the great flood of Nuh, peace be upon him, nations took the pure tradition of Qurban and twisted it to serve their own worldly anxieties. They forgot the Lord of the heavens and began sacrificing to the forces of nature. They believed that if they spilled enough blood, the rain would fall, their crops would multiply, and their enemies would be crushed. This corruption festered and darkened until it plummeted into the ultimate depravity: human sacrifice. The Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, and later the Aztecs, they all had elaborate, bloody sacrificial traditions. But the existence of these pagan rituals does not prove that sacrifice originated in paganism. Think about it deeply. Why do criminals forge fake currency? They only create fake money because a real, valuable currency already exists. The pagan rituals were merely distorted.
Sees a dream. In the realm of prophethood, dreams are not mere subconscious wanderings. They are absolute divine revelation. He sees himself holding a knife, slaughtering his beloved son. At first, the sheer horror of the vision must have shaken his human heart. But the dream returns, undeniable and absolute. The command has been given. Allah, the one who named Ibrahim his Khalil, his intimate friend, was now asking for the most agonizing proof of that friendship. Why? Because sometimes the human heart loves the blessings of Allah so deeply that those blessings unknowingly begin to compete with the love for Allah himself. Allah did not want to destroy Ismail. Allah wanted to destroy the attachment to Ismail that resided in Ibrahim's heart. The true majesty of this story, however, does not solely belong to the father. It belongs equally to the son. Ibrahim did not trick his son. He did not ambush him in the dark. He looked into the eyes of the boy he loved more than his own life and told him of the divine decree. Ask yourself, what would you do? Would you run? Would you beg for your life? Would you scream at the injustice of it all? But Ismail's response is etched into the eternal words of the Quran, a testament of submission that makes the angels weep. He said, "O my father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast." Father and son walked together toward Medina. The air was thick with unseen tension. Satan appeared repeatedly, desperately whispering into Ibrahim's ear, trying to ignite the natural protective instincts of a father, trying to make him doubt the revelation. But Ibrahim pelted the devil with stones, rejecting the whispers of logic and emotion for the absolute certainty of faith. When the moment arrived, Ibrahim laid his beautiful son face down upon the earth so he would not have to look into his eyes as the blade moved. He pressed the sharp steel against the boy's throat. The universe fell completely, utterly silent. The sun, the mountains, the angels all held their breath. He pulled the knife with all his strength, but the blade refused to cut. The creator of the knife commanded the steel to lose its nature. The test was over. The submission was absolute. A massive ram was sent down from the heavens as a ransom. The Quran echoes this triumph, and we ransomed him with a great sacrifice. Allah never desired human blood. He desired the complete surrender of the human will. This is the pounding heartbeat of Eid Al-Adha. It is the realization that true freedom is only found when you place the knife of faith to the throat of your own worldly desires. This monumental event established a legacy that flowed through the veins of every prophet. But history is a battlefield of narratives, and centuries later, a profound theological divergence occurred that split the Abrahamic world. If sacrifice is so central to humanity's relationship with God, why do modern Christians no longer sacrifice animals?
To understand this, we must look at the tragic year of 70 CE when the Roman legions smashed through the walls of Jerusalem and burned the Second Temple to the ground. For centuries, the Jewish people had centered their entire faith around the sacrificial altar within that temple. They offered burnt offerings for sins, for gratitude, and for vows. During Yom Kippur, the high priest would offer a blood sacrifice to cleanse the entire nation. But when the temple fell, Judaism was thrown into a massive theological crisis. However, decades before the Roman fires, a small sect of believers in Jerusalem had already begun whispering a revolutionary and controversial idea. They claimed that the need for animal sacrifice was over forever. These early Christians believed that around the year 33 CE, on the dusty hill of Golgotha, the ultimate, final sacrifice had been made. They took the ancient Jewish framework of the high priest and the sacrificial lamb and applied it to Prophet Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him. The Christian doctrine of atonement dictates that Jesus was both the high priest and revealing its location. But as he began to dig, he faced fierce opposition from the powerful tribes of Quraysh. Feeling weak and outnumbered, he made a desperate, heavy vow. If Allah granted him 10 strong sons to protect him, he would sacrifice one of them at the Kaaba. Years passed, the sons were born and grew into strong men, and the terrifying debt of the vow came due.
The family gathered in the shadow of the Kaaba, surrounded by idols, to cast lots. The name drawn was Abdullah, the youngest, the most handsome and the purest of his sons, the man who was destined to father the final messenger. The shock that rippled through Mecca was palpable. Abdul Muttalib, a man of terrifying resolve, took his beloved son by the hand and gripped his knife, ready to fulfill his oath to the divine. It was a haunting historical echo of Ibrahim and Ismail.
But the people of Mecca wept and intervened, begging him to find an alternative. A diviner suggested casting lots between Abdullah and 10 camels. The lot fell on Abdullah. They increased it to 20, then 30, then 40. Each time, the wooden arrows condemned the young man to the blade. The suspense was suffocating. It wasn't until the ransom reached an astronomical 100 camels that the lot finally fell on the animals. Abdullah was spared, and 100 camels were slaughtered, their meat left for the people and the wild beasts. Because of this awe-inspiring history, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would later proudly declare, "I am the son of the 2 sacrificed fathers," referring to Prophet Ismail and his own father, Abdullah. Both were placed under the shadow of the blade, and both were miraculously ransomed so that the lineage of absolute light, the Nur-i-Muhammadi, could endure to illuminate a dark world. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, established the first Islamic society in the illuminated city of Medina, the chaotic pagan distortions of sacrifice were permanently abolished, and the pure Sunnah of Ibrahim was resurrected. The first Eid Al-Adha, in the 2nd year after Hijrah, was a sight of unimaginable beauty. The streets of Medina vibrated with the takbir. Believers who had been tortured, starved, and exiled from Mecca were now standing shoulder to shoulder with the Ansar of Medina, united as one invincible brotherhood. The Prophet, dressed in radiant white, walked to the prayer area. He noticed that some overly eager companions had already slaughtered their animals before the Eid prayer. With gentle firmness, he corrected them, declaring those sacrifices invalid as Qurban. He taught them a profound lesson: you do not take a life for Allah before you have bowed your own head to Allah in prayer. Order, discipline, and divine sequence matter. The prayer of submission must precede the physical act of sacrifice. During that first Eid, the Prophet's mercy towards the animals was revolutionary. He forbade the sharpening of knives in front of the frightened creatures. He demanded that animals not be slaughtered in full view of one another, recognizing their psychological terror. He taught his companions that while we have permission to consume their meat, we do not their knives like butchers instead of believers. The third disease is the obsession with the meat itself. Families hoard freezers full of prime cuts, measuring the success of their Qurban by the sheer weight of the flesh they yield, completely forgetting the starving neighbors and the desperately poor who wait an entire year just to taste meat. The Quran screams against this spiritual blindness. Their meat will not reach Allah, nor will their blood, but what reaches Him is piety from you. If your freezer is full, but your heart is empty of empathy, your sacrifice is nothing more than dead flesh. This brings us to the profound psychological friction of the modern era. Why is the 21st century mind so deeply offended by the sight of Qurban? As we hurtle towards a highly digitized, artificial future, modern humanity has constructed an invisible wall between themselves and the reality of death. When a person buys a neatly wrapped, bloodless piece of meat from a fluorescent-lit supermarket, they do not have to confront the reality that a life was taken to sustain their own. They are insulated from the raw, gritty truth of existence. But Qurban shatters that comfortable illusion. It forces a human being to stand in the dirt, to look an animal in the eye, to say the name of the Creator, and to take responsibility for the transition from life to death. It is a stark, unavoidable reminder that everything in this world is temporary. Everything bleeds, everything dies, and one day, the very hands holding the knife will be buried in the same earth. Modern society hates Qurban because it forces them to confront their own mortality.
They mask their fear with arguments about animal rights and vegan morality, conveniently ignoring the billions of animals tortured in secular, mechanized factory farms just to fuel their fast food industries. They push for lab-grown, artificial meat because it allows them to consume without consequence, to play God without acknowledging Him. But Qurban
is not an industry of consumption. It is an act of spiritual resistance. It is a rebellion against the soulless, hyper-capitalist machine that views animals as mere units of profit and humans as mere units of consumption. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, warned us of the end times, the signs of Qiyamah. He spoke of an era where holding on to the pure faith would be like clutching a burning coal in your bare hands. As the world becomes increasingly secular, aggressively atheistic, and obsessed with artificial realities, the simple act of performing Qurban will become a monumental test of Iman. You will face mockery. You will face judgment from a society that values the illusion of compassion over the reality of divine command. In that suffocating environment, to stand firm, to raise the blade, and to declare Bismillahi Allahu Akbar will be an act of supreme courage. It is a public declaration that says, I am not a slave to modern trends. I am not a slave to the sterile utopia of the 21st century. I am a follower of Muhammad, the descendant of Ibrahim. I belong to a truth that is older than your empires and will outlast your civilizations. As we reflect on the profound depths of sacrifice, we must prepare ourselves for the ultimate journey. Our time in this fleeting world is running out. The breath in our lungs is borrowed, and the wealth in our hands is nothing but a temporary illusion. One of the most beautiful and awe-inspiring narrations tells us that on the terrifying day of judgment, when the sky is torn apart and the stars fall like dust, the animals we sacrificed with pure intentions will be resurrected. They will come forward with their horns, their hooves, and their hair. And the Prophet told us to treat our sacrificial animals with utmost respect, because they will serve as our mounts, carrying us over the razor-thin, terrifying bridge of the Sirat, over the roaring abyss of hellfire, and into the eternal safety of paradise. Your Qurban is not just an animal, it is your companion in the hereafter. It is the physical manifestation of your willingness to let go of this world for the sake of the Almighty. May Allah grant us the unwavering courage of Ibrahim, the beautiful patience of Ismail, and the profound mercy of Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon them all. Thank you for embarking on this deep spiritual journey with Divine Sagas. May your faith remain unyielding, and may your sacrifices be eternally accepted.